Good morning. Uh, a very good morning to all my friends. And today I will be discussing on proprioceptive neuromuscular facilitation as an approach to exercise. And when I say proprioceptive neuromuscular facilitation, I mean a method of exercise, but in a different way. So, whenever we talk about a specialized approach, we are actually talking about a way of exercising for rehabilitation. So, PNF is one of such an approach towards rehabilitation that uses an exercise as a mode of treatment. So, when we are talking about proprioceptive neuromuscular facilitation, we need to understand the origins of the approach. And there was a time in the early 1900s that the exercises, the importance of exercises came into existence, and we could understand, the medical fraternity and the science could understand how and why are the exercises important. But the way we used to exercise was very different from what we adopt and what we are utilizing now. At that time, as you can see, the exercises were designed for a motion, for working on a joint or a particular muscle that was weak or paralyzed, maybe a joint that was stiff or tight, maybe a motion that had to be retrained, and that was the focus of the rehabilitation. But the outcomes were not so great with this approach of one motion, one action, one joint, or one muscle type of an approach. So, looking at and understanding this, if you look at these three pictures in the presentation, and not only these three pictures, but look around you and you understand that whenever we are in a function, whenever we are doing a movement related to a function, it is never a single joint or a muscle that is part of the function. The function is an integrated action of the whole human body, and that encompasses a lot of human systems, including the musculoskeletal, the neuromuscular, the sensory, the respiratory, the cardiovascular, the emotional, psychological systems working together to coordinate for the function to be done. Therefore, an outright emphasis on the neuromuscular, the musculoskeletal, or just the sensory approach towards rehabilitation may not be sufficient. So, looking at the functional aspects, we need to understand how a function is done. For example, a simple function of picking up a book and placing it at some other point. Now, when we do that, or picking up any object for a function, and when we do that, we never think about which muscles or joints should I be activating, where should my concentration be. And if you look that whenever I do a task, my focus is on the outcome, the end result of what happens while planning a movement. It is never the processes involved in movement that are important as to the range of motion of a joint, which joint, when to move a joint, when should a muscle be contracted, how should a muscle be contracted. So when I do not think of a muscle or a joint while performing a function, then probably while retraining or relearning a function, they should be not that important as the function itself or the result or outcome of the movement itself. Because that is how the neuromuscular system plans a movement based on what is the goal and what is the outcome of the movement. So if you think about this, there is no particular joint that I did focus on. There is no particular muscle that I did focus while performing this task. So when my focus is not on individual muscles or joint, so while performing a training session for my subjects, I should always be thinking about the outcome or the result of movement, and not just bending of a joint, lifting of the hand without an objective or an outcome. It is very important to understand this concept of Beaver's axiom, which says that the brain knows nothing about individual muscle action but knows only about motions, and motions are directed towards an action or goal. So based on this, in the early 1940s, the connection of human segments, connection of one muscle to another, uh, interconnectedness of the skeletal system, the fascia, everything was understood while performing a function. And whenever we do a movement, it is important to understand these interrelatedness of body segments. For example, just to throw an object or just to pick up a glass, I always have to think about not only the hand moving, but the elbow, shoulder, the head and neck orienting to the object, the trunk as a part of movement, and maybe while bringing it up, there are other sensations and other body segments that will be a part of the task. So things are interrelated, and when I say interrelated, that means multiple muscles help each other mechanically and anatomically to perform the movement. Therefore, to give the body an advantage while performing a task, to reduce the effort, to reduce the chances of errors that the human body makes, the body has a system of interconnectedness and working together. Now, if you can see this picture, the muscles are already connected. Therefore, they are in a position to mechanically and anatomically support and help each other. And this is what we call as synergistic action of muscles working together or interconnectedly. A simple task of walking or taking a step forward seems to be a lower extremity task. But if you look at the chain of muscles that can be activated during this task, it is not just limited to the leg or the foot, but the trunk that participates for the ability to lift the leg up and balancing while you are taking a step. The head and neck and the upper limbs are also a part of managing the center of mass movement within that narrow base of support while you are balancing and taking a step. And these interconnectedness and the synergistic action of muscles where they mechanically link and help each other could be a learned action, and that is why all human beings perform these actions differently, and some of them are within us genetically or by birth. As you can see, during birth we can see stepping reactions and some movements which are present in a newborn baby who has never experienced walking or has never learnt walking. So these can be learnt synergies which are very specific to the individual, and these can be genetic or these can be from the beginning within the human body. Now, if you see that the muscles are interconnected, why do they connect with each other, or why is there this synergism of muscles? It is always that to make the movement, to accomplish the goal, the muscles are working. The muscles are working together to accomplish the task and the goal. So therefore, in treatment, we should be using purposeful movements as our treatment options to accomplish these goals. Now, if you see this player pulling the racket for a shot, and you see it looks like an upper extremity task, but the upper extremity connects to the trunk connects to the lower extremity. So in order to get strength in the shot, the player is utilizing the whole body to accomplish the goal or the purpose of the task. Now, when we talk about these movements or treatment options, we must think about the movement in multiple planes. And this is what the PNF utilizes. The patterns, the PNF utilizes the treatment options as mass movement. So when I say mass movement, that means as functions are performed in multiple planes utilizing multiple joints and muscles together, the treatment should also be directed towards the movements encompassing all the planes of the body and multiple joints and muscles. So by definition, if you see, talking about PNF, proprioceptive, neuromuscular, and facilitation. And when I talk of that, facilitating the neuromuscular system through the use of proprioceptors. So as sensory receptors, the proprioceptors have an important role to play. And when I talk of proprioceptors, these are the receptors within the joints, the muscles, giving us information about my own body, the position of the body with respect to the surroundings, the position of one part of the body with respect to the other, and this information is sent through the receptors within the muscles, receptors within the joints as to is it weight bearing, is it bent, is it extended, is the muscle elongated, is the muscle contracting. So whatever is happening, this information is given by the proprioceptors, and this information is used as a demand that is placed on the system. By stimulating the proprioceptors, I place a demand on the system, the neuromuscular system, such that an outcome or a movement is facilitated. And when I talk of facilitation, facilitation means to make it easier for the neuromuscular system to execute the movement. Instead, it is not passive. It is not that I assist or I help. It is by placing a demand, I should make the response from the neuromuscular system easier to achieve. So, in the same way, by definition, the PNF should be a method of placing a demand to get a response. Looking at the slight background of PNF, PNF is based on motor learning, whereas many therapists consider diagonals or movement patterns to be important. But looking at the philosophical approach, PNF is based on the motor learning concepts, and when I talk of the motor learning concepts, it is considered to be a functional approach. Now, earlier at times, PNF was considered to be a developmental approach following the steps of development, following the sequence of development, and although they are still followed, they are still considered to be a part of treatment, but the primacy has been given to the function. And when we talk of function, there are 4 aspects to it, that it is a positive approach. When I say a positive approach, means I should create a setup where the patient succeeds. Now, every time a patient comes to a therapist for rehabilitation, there are a lot of things that he cannot do or he or she cannot do. And focusing on the incapabilities or what the patient cannot do, it is very important that we also look at what are the strengths, what are the capabilities, and utilize that as a beginning of the treatment, where the patient is motivated by success, by accomplishment, and then increase the challenge as is expected for motor learning. Mobilizing the reserves is an important concept of PNF, which says that the strong or the strengths within the body will help overcome the weakness in the body, and therefore mobilize the reserves. Reserves means every human has a potential to achieve more than what they are doing, but in real life, only if they are demanded to do, a response can be achieved. So so we need to place that extra demand such that an extra response is generated. And the functional task-based approach makes it easier for the human system to regain and relearn the movement. And the concept is based on the whole person concept or the whole individual concept, wherein my treatment is not directed to a tight muscle or a stiff joint, but to the functional retraining or relearning of the individual as a whole. Now, to achieve this, there are a few components that we use in PNF, are the basic procedures, the techniques that are used, and patterns are a part of all the combined treatment and not the sole treatment in PNF. Now, what is important for us as therapists is to understand what works, what did not work, And based on that, think about why did I choose this as a method. Now, it is important not to learn PNF as a skill, but it is more important to learn the decision making of why I came to this decision of using PNF. And uh, was the outcomes as I expected? Now, is there a change in my decision making? Is there a change that I would expect the next time a subject comes to me? So it is not just learning the skills, but it is important to deal with the situations. And a lot of times the outcomes of therapy are defined by increase in strength, change in range of motion, or maybe isometric strength or an isokinetic strength. But it is also important that as therapists, we must focus on patient satisfaction, quality of life, and cost of treatment. Most of the rehabilitation goes for a long time, and everything, every aspect of the outcome is important, and not just the physical aspects. And it will be very important as a learning therapist that you understand this while utilizing PNF in your treatment. Thank you.